Which is worse? Which is worse, that Trump is running a protection racket presidency and bribed one senator to vote for his big, beautiful, soak the poor budget bill while metaphorically bumping off another senator who wouldn't vote for it? Or that Trump threatened Israel, threatened the government of Israel, threatened funds for Israel if Israel's courts won't do what he wants, and nobody here noticed that. Which is worse? Well, it's a trick question because these are actually just two versions of the same story. It is a protection racket. There are just two parts of the protection racket. There is the domestic operations of the protection racket and the international operations of the same protection racket. Trump is trying to take over control of everything in the world. Thom Tillis, the vaguely responsible Republican senator from North Carolina, refused to let Trump politically rape him Saturday night and would not vote to advance the budget bill. Trump had been threatening him for weeks, months, then accelerated it, finally began to ask online for volunteers to primary Tillis. Tillis then announced yesterday he will retire from the Senate at the end of his term next year. So much for Mr. Tillis. So much for somebody, anybody in the Republican Party saying, I owe this country something. I'm staying. I'm going to fight this son of a bitch. I don't care. No, he's taking the noble way out. He's going to just retire. Retire to hell, you coward. So much for the thought that when the country is up against it and the brakes are beating the boys, tell them to go out there with all they got and win just one for the tiller. I don't know where I'll be then, but I'll know about it and I'll be happy. Well, I know where Thom Tillis will be. He'll be back home in Cornelius, North Carolina or somewhere, presumably drinking heavily, reflecting on how he represents the utter moral and ethical decline of the already near bankrupt and nearly totally declined Republican Party. Tillis began by refusing 9 years ago to vote on Obama's Supreme Court nominee in an election year, a made-up rule that violated the Constitution and will send Mitch McConnell to hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 immediately. Tillis went from that to calling the Access Hollywood tape indefensible and then defending the man who's on the Access Hollywood tape, to co-authoring legislation to protect the Robert Mueller special counsel role, to voting with Trump anyway 90% of the time, to one last gasp from inside the Borg collective about what was right and what was wrong, to what he did the next morning, running the F away. So now the Republicans will nominate somebody worse than Thom Tillis, somebody who doesn't even stand up for 12 hours before running away, somebody who walks in with a big sign already hanging around his or her neck, a homemade sign reading, political prostitute. The ideal choice would be Tim Scott. But, of course, he's already the Republican senatorial political prostitute from North Carolina. I can't elect him twice, I think. Yes, that's right. We've elected Tim Scott again. He's now 2 senators from North Carolina. They might try somebody from the North Carolina delegation in Dr. Tung's 3D House of Representatives. But the seat will probably be up for grabs next year. The Democrats have some candidates. So Punchbowl News is reporting buzz about the NRCC chair, Richard Hudson, and the RNC chair, Michael Whatley, and a local gal from Wilmington named Lara Lee Yanaska, though you may know her by her married name, Lara Trump. And if you'd like to drop the protection racket analogy and go instead with the crime family analogy, there you go. For all I know, Tillis is running away because he didn't get the Murkowski. And so much for that ass clown, too. I don't want to hear about what she might be able to do to fend off Trump. I don't want to hear about her ethical wrestling matches. I don't want to hear about her Susan Collins concerns, only with less kabuki theater makeup than Collins wears. She saw what Trump's big, beautiful, crush the middle class, increase the debt by trillions bill, and raise your electricity bill 30% bill would do to her, and she knew the difference between right and wrong. Wrong would have been missing her opportunity at a Trump bribe. From the Times, quote, a new provision allowing individuals in a non-contiguous state to be exempt from enforcing new work requirements imposed on SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, appeared aimed at mollifying Ms. Murkowski of Alaska. Her state would be hit with billions of dollars in nutrition assistance costs as a result of the legislation, and she had cited the provision as one of her chief concerns. She's very concerned. The bill also includes new health provisions designed to benefit Alaska, as well as new tax benefits for fishermen in the state waters of, any guesses? Alaska. Well, congratulations, Senator Murkowski. You successfully sold out 330 million Americans to benefit the 740,000 Alaskans. And, cleverly, you did it without checking first with the Senate parliamentarian, who promptly ruled that the How to Buy Alaska's Vote proviso violates the Byrd Rule, which prohibits extraneous, well, among other things, extraneous bribery from budget reconciliation measures in the Senate. Sorry, Murkowski, you sold your soul for nothing. There will be no Murkowski carve-out, and there will be no refund. Of course, now we have to watch to see how soon before Trump starts to threaten the Senate parliamentarian, or if the Senate parliamentarian vanishes. I'm not even going to mention the name of the Senate parliamentarian. I'll just mention they have been praised in the past by John Thune and John Cornyn, and they have served under the last 4 ping-pong administrations: Democratic, Republican, Democratic, and, of course, the most recent one, fascist dictatorial. And about threatening Israel, Trump is both so out of control, but also so gone in the head that he posted 2 startling things, startling even for him, on his Crap Shack social media site. One was evidently some kind of private thank you note intended for somebody named Jamie, which he somehow, for some reason, posted instead on, quote, Truth, it's a brand name, unquote, social. Now, Jamie could have been J.D. Vance. I mean, we don't really know how many different names he's had in his past. We think it's just these 3, but he could be Jamie. Could have been Jamie Foxx. Could have been Jamie Foxx because maybe Trump thinks Jamie Foxx and Fox News are the same thing. Who knows? The other thing that he posted was an attempt to take his protection racket presidency and extend it to bullying and owning the courts in other countries. Who is the John Roberts of Israel? Who is the Alito? Who is the Clarence Thomas? Quote, it is terrible what they are doing in Israel to Bibi Netanyahu. He is a war hero and a prime minister who did a fabulous job working with the United States, brings great success getting rid of the dangerous nuclear threat in Iran. By the way, they didn't get rid of the dangerous nuclear threat in Iran. They're going to be enriching the uranium within a month. Importantly, he is right now in the process of negotiating a deal with Hamas, which has been negotiating since October of 2023, which will include getting the hostages back. How is it possible that the Prime Minister of Israel can be forced to sit in a courtroom all day long over nothing, cigars, Bugs Bunny doll, etc.? It is a political witch hunt, very similar to the witch hunt that I was forced to endure, this travesty, blah, 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 interfere with both, blah, 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 blah. The United States of America spends billions of dollars a year, far more than on any other nation, protecting and supporting Israel. We're not going to stand for this. We just had a great victory with Prime Minister Netanyahu at the helm, and this greatly tarnishes our victory. Let Bibi go. He's got a big job to do. I've read a lot of political analysis of this, domestic and some international, and not once do I see anybody telling it, to co-sell you briefly, like it really is. That's a threat. That's a threat by the President of the United States against the state of Israel. That is a threat against Israel to cut American funding, to cut the billions of dollars a year. That's a threat. If the courts don't do what the president wants, not the president of Israel, the president of the United States, which is a different country. Now, ordinarily, throughout our history and Israel's, an American president publicly threatening Israel, that would be the moment we said, and that's when his political career ended. But of course, Trump's support of Israel isn't about Israel or Jewish people. He doesn't like either of them. It's about the evangelicals here and their apocalyptic vision of the end of the world and how Netanyahu fits into the rapture. If an Iranian mullah suddenly swapped hairstyles and headgear and pronounced that Mike Huckabee is absolutely right and God had just told him so, Trump would support the mullah to replace Netanyahu immediately. He threatened Israel. And just to make this a little worse, it seems like it may have worked. Remembering the law of A and then B, that B is not always caused by A. From the Reuters reporter in Jerusalem, quote, the Jerusalem District Court canceled this week's hearings in Prime Minister Netanyahu's long-running corruption trial, accepting a request the Israeli leader made, citing classified diplomatic and security grounds. It was unclear whether a social media post by U.S. President Trump influenced the court's decision. Trump suggested blah, 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 blah. Where's Chuck Schumer on this? Where's Chuck Schumer, whom Trump keeps calling a, quote, Palestinian? Where is Chuck Schumer standing up for once in his life and saying, I'm a Palestinian? You fat F? You just threatened to cut funds from Israel? You just threatened to cut off American funds from Israel, you anti-Semite bastard? Where is Kristen Gillibrand? Where is Kristen Gillibrand calling Trump an anti-Semite, or at least anti-Israel? Where is she? Kristen Gillibrand, who, by the way, has now done exactly two things since assuming her Senate office in 2009 and becoming the most inert Democratic senator in history. She went nuts on radio, on NPR, live, for Christ's sakes, repeating every MAGA lie about the Democratic candidate for mayor of New York, which is in the state of New York, which apparently Senator Gillibrand does not know. Every MAGA lie about Zoran Mamdani, who is not anti-Semitic and has not praised the Intifada, and he is Bronx. He's a lot of other things too, but he's Bronx. In fact, he's Bronx science, which makes him more American than I am, because I didn't actually go to school in the Bronx. I'm just from the Bronx. Kristen Gillibrand now adds to being the first to move to force out Al Franken from the Senate for something that would now be deemed insufficient to get him into the Trump administration. Al Franken, who was 1,000 times the senator Gillibrand would be if she served 1,000 years. She's now added to that an attack on the Democratic nominee in the biggest city that she represents in the Senate. allegedly represents. Because you will never convince me she's not in the Senate from New York as some kind of bizarre witness relocation program thingy.
He does not support violent intifada. Is that fair?
So, Brian, I didn't hear your exchange with him, but if I was speaking to him directly, I would simply say that is not how the words are received. And it doesn't matter what meaning you have in your brain. It is not how the word is received. And when you use a word like intifada to many Jewish Americans and Jewish New Yorkers, that means you are permissive for violence against Jews. It is a serious word. It is a word that has deep meaning. It has been used for wars across time and violence and destruction and slaughter and murder against the Jews. It is a harmful, hurtful, inappropriate word for anyone who wants to represent a city as diverse as New York City with 8 million people. And I would be very specific in these words, and I would say you may not use them again if you expect to represent everyone ever again, because they are received as hateful and divisive and harmful, and that's it. So I appreciate that he told you he didn't mean that, and that's great. That's
and
a great
I think
place to start.
Also clarify, or he was clarifying that he never said globalize the intifada. He was asked in an interview if he would denounce the phrase globalize the intifada, and then that led to this kind of conversation, that you were just referring to. But that he was never out there saying globalize the intifada. He was asked about other people who used it. So just to be precise about what happened there. Yes.
Well, as a leader of a city as diverse as New York City, with 8 million people, as the largest Jewish population in the country, he should denounce it. And that's it, period. And you can't celebrate it, you can't value it, you can't lift it up. And that is the challenge.
She should be institutionalized. No one has ever heard her speak that fast, frenzied, nor that insane, nor addressing anything. She's completely wrong, obviously. But she's so animated about it. This is the first time Gillibrand has managed to confirm she's not some sort of plastic blow-up doll, but an actual human being. And how does she do it? She does it by losing her mind and attacking very possibly the most responsible politician who happens to be a Muslim in this country. A guy who is far more of a New Yorker than she is. Resign! Get out! You worthless MAGA-parroting Albany clown! Resign. She now says she misspoke. I'll tell you when she misspoke. She misspoke when she took the oath of office. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's when she misspoke. You just carried Trump's water for him, you moronic cipher. You just carried Cuomo's water for him, and Trump's, and Curtis Sliwa. The guardian angels idiot in the stupid beret. You carried the water of all those people against the Democratic nominee in the biggest city you represent. By the way, let me tell you something apparently you don't know, Senator Gillibrand. You are in the Democratic Party. And you know what's going on behind the scenes here, right? That she played right into. I would assume she was part of this, except she's too stupid to be a part of anything planned. A New York Post financial reporter writes, quote, prominent donors are gunning to get Republican mayoral nominee Curtis Sliwa a job in the Trump administration in hopes of pushing him out of New York City's mayoral race. Sources told me. The aim is to open up the GOP nomination and the nearly 30% of the vote someone running in that lane is expected to get for current Mayor Eric Adams. So Adams could run as the Republican nominee against Mamdani. Adams could run pretending to be the anti-Semitism candidate and get introduced by Sneeko. And Curtis Sliwa could become Trump's new Secretary of Berets. And I was reminded that last November, the guy who isn't Zoran Mamdani, whom Gillibrand just helped, Sliwa, said this on Staten Island to an Israeli reporter regarding anti-Semitism. This is right before the last election. Quote, I tell the Jews all the time, I'm a Gentile. It's in our DNA. You need to wake up and understand that we always blame the Jews no matter what happens. Curtis Sliwa, whom Gillibrand helped. And by the way, President Protection Racket gave his game away about New York, too, yesterday with Maria Bartiromo. Quote, whoever's mayor of New York is going to have to behave themselves or the federal government is coming down very tough on them financially. We already know this drill. Trump wants Cuomo as mayor, no matter what he says about Cuomo, but Adams will do because they dropped the corruption charges against Adams and made sure they could reinstate them at any point. And they already announced the investigation of Cuomo, and they could charge him at any point. So with Mayor Cuomo or Mayor Adams, Trump can blackmail them into anything, especially into letting Trump's ISIS raids continue here. And now we have the money injected into the equation by Trump. I will go back to the one solution to all this, swallowed up by Trump's Los Angeles ISIS raids, the day after the solution was spoken by Gavin Newsom, June 6th. Haven't heard it since for obvious reasons, but this is it. What are we going to do? This. We're going to do this. What could we possibly do to stop Trump? This is what we can do to stop Trump. Are there any solutions? It seems like every guardrail. This is the guardrail. What he wrote on June 6th was, the governor, Californians pay the bills for the federal government. We pay over $80 billion more in taxes than we get back. Maybe it's time to cut that off, Donald Trump. It's going to reach that point. It is a protection racket. And the only thing that stops a protection racket in the absence of law enforcement, and law enforcement is part of the protection racket, the only thing is to have a greater financial gun pointed at the people running the protection racket than they have pointed at you. Let's get to it right now. Let's get it started right now. Never mind the midterms. Never mind 2028. We'll deal with them when they happen. We can deal with this now. The blue states and their attorneys general and their tax experts and their governors should convene right now with Gavin Newsom and see what can be done to stop forwarding federal tax money to the federal government from the blue states. Right now, to starve Trump into submission. Right now, starve him. Because A, it will work, and because B, in our sad times, this is actually the closest thing we will see for decades to ethical. We used to split our big decisions in life 50-50, or at least it seemed that way as late as when I was in college and in my 20s and in my 30s. People quit jobs on principle, or at least on the fear of getting caught. People did things and didn't say, but I got paid $1 million to do this. And everybody didn't just go, oh, okay, it's all right then. I'm not just judging here. I took a job at Fox once. Lots of reasons, lots of ancillary factors. The tipping point was they were going to pay me 5 times what I was making at NBC. I've done it. But we used to do this on a 50-50 basis. Half your decisions in life for you. Half your decisions in life for you and everybody. Basically ethics or cash. Now, what is it? 99-1? When was the last time somebody did anything important, anything permanent, irretrievable, because to do otherwise was just wrong? Oh, wait. Murkowski? Not only did she not do that, she didn't even do anything smart. She sold out, and it turned out she doesn't get what she sold out for. Tillis? I have taken my stand, and now I'm going to run away, and the rest of you can deal with this, because I'll be in North Carolina, and it's not like it's going to affect me. It's not like the stochastic terrorism is ever going to affect me, just because we had a political assassination in this country earlier this month. Trump? Anybody named Trump to do something right rather than for profit? Starve the federal government, starve MAGA, starve Trump, and they'll understand. They will fold immediately because they will do what's right to protect their money. In times like this, I always think of one scene from what I think is probably the most underrated motion picture of all time. It was considered a bomb when it came out. I think it should be considered a classic. It's improved over the half a century since its release to, no, that's actually very good. But when it came out, people were so disappointed because the book was so big and rich and nuanced and layered and intricate, you couldn't have made a perfect movie out of it. This is actually almost a perfect movie. It's called Catch-22. This is after Lieutenant Nately, the character who's played by, of all people, Art Garfunkel, gets blown up when the American generals and Lieutenant Milo Minderbinder make a deal with the Germans. The Germans will pay full value for some worthless cotton from Minderbinder's so-called syndicate. He's running the black market during the Second World War. If the Americans will bomb their own air base on behalf of the Germans. Now, if this sounds familiar to you, like it's something that's been in the news recently, well, that's because Trump now claims the Iranians responded to the bombing of their nuclear sites by warning us in advance they were going to go and bomb the U.S. base at Qatar. And Trump says, they said, what time? 1 o'clock. And Trump says, I said 1 o'clock is fine. And we let them bomb us. After the bombing run in the movie Catch-22, Martin Balsam says, as the bombs are falling, American bombs on an American base, to pay off a deal with the Germans, Martin Balsam says, it's all part of the contract. Isn't that what we're fighting for? Anyway, the dialogue that I'm referring to sums up America right now, today, and sums up what Michael Nichols, the director, saw coming when he made the movie in 1969 and 1970, what Joseph Heller must have seen when he wrote the novel in 1953, and when he lived this experience in the Second World War. Nately is dead, literally blown to pieces. Yossarian is his friend, the protagonist, played to perfection in the movie by Alan Arkin. Lieutenant Minderbinder. Nately died a wealthy man, Yossarian. He had over 60 shares in the syndicate. Yossarian. What difference does that make? He's dead. Minderbinder. Then his family will get it. Yossarian. He didn't have time to have a family. Minderbinder. Then his parents will get it. Yossarian. They don't need it. They're rich. Minderbinder. Then they'll understand. Ooh. That's today's MAGA. That's today's Republicans. That's Thom Tillis. That's Murkowski. That's John Roberts. That's all of them. They don't need it. They'll rich. Then they'll understand. That's today's Trump. That's today's America. And by the way, for a real belly laugh, in the movie, that character, the ultimate cynic, the ultimate grifter, Milo Minderbinder, is played also perfectly by Jon Voight. Headlines, so many headlines. Number one, Washington Post. The United States obtained intercepted communications between senior Iranian officials discussing this month's military strikes on Iran's nuclear program and remarking that the attack was less devastating than they had expected, per 4 sources. The communication, intended to be private. Did you copy Hegseth on this? Included Iranian government officials speculating as to why the strikes directed by Trump were not as destructive and extensive as they anticipated, per sources. I am waiting to hear that Trump, who has promised to sue all the news organizations who say that it was not obliteration, I'm waiting for him, after bombing Iran, to sue Iran for not saying they got really, really obliterated. Senator Roger Marshall, you remember him, the one who thinks our last great terrorist attack in this country is pronounced 9/11. Senator Roger Marshall disagrees. He claims that Trump's strikes led to total devastation of the Iranian nuclear facilities, citing my assessment, everything I can see. I'll just add, everything I can see. Senator Marshall is a gynecologist. Headline number 2, Trump made up a statistic. If his budget bill were to fail, he said there would be a 68% tax increase. This is what he used against Tillis. Tillis is supporting a 68% tax increase. Made up. Where he got it, where he saw it, I don't know. I'm assuming Jamie told him about it. There is the possibility that the President of the United States of America currently actively has an invisible friend named Jamie, which would increase his total number of friends to 1. Number 3, oh, by the way, we no longer have a Constitution. Oops. The Supreme Court did not just rule that a federal district judge cannot stop a presidential proclamation, even if it is illegal, even if it would, say, kill people. The Supreme Court said if it's illegal, even if it could kill people, a federal judge cannot really delay it, let alone overrule it. Let's just cut right to the extreme here. Trump has already issued a presidential proclamation demanding Miles Taylor be investigated for treason, and anybody associated with Miles Taylor. What if Trump now ratchets it up? I mean, he's losing his mind actively every day. There's something else that makes no sense, Jamie. What if he suddenly issues a presidential proclamation, and who the hell's going to stop him now? A judge in Israel? If he suddenly declares that 20 people, including Miles Taylor, just for the sake of argument, are guilty of treason. You know, how far do you want to take this? Let's cut out the courts thing. I'm Trump. I'm now going to be the courts. I'm going to make the decisions and the outcomes and the sentences. I am both Judge and Judy. What if he does that? Who's going to stop him? So what if it's totally illegal? And Miles Taylor sues, or one of the other 20 people on the list of these people are treasonous, decapitate them. They sue, and a federal judge issues a temporary restraining order while it goes up to the Supreme Court. Good luck up there, Miles. Oops, you other 19 are not part of this lawsuit? You're out of luck. You remain on the kill list. That's the problem. You have to be part for a federal judge anywhere to overrule a crazy-ass president doing illegal things, for a federal judge to step in and just stop it, let alone overruling it, just delay it for 30 days or 30 minutes. To be delayed, you can only be protected by that delay if you're part of some sort of class action suit. If Miles Taylor and the other 19 don't sue, the judge can save the one person who sued, or if they coordinate, everybody in the class action suit. If they don't, sorry, the rest of you are dead. Obviously, this is the worst case scenario. On the other hand, Trump is the worst case scenario. The Supreme Court of the United States, the worst case scenario. Because the actual case will simply, the one we're talking about here that precipitated all this, will simply strip citizenship from people born in this country. This will happen next October. If you doubt it will happen next October, I'd like to congratulate you on waking from that coma you fell into late in 2014. It's not that we're going fascist or dictatorial. We've gone fascist. We've gone dictatorial. This asshole president is telling the courts in Israel what to do, and they're doing it. If some of the people who have citizenship stripped, and don't say that too many times too fast, if some of them sue, maybe a district court can put a hold on it, but if they're not in the suit, they're gone. Abrego Garcia. If they are in the suit, and of course it eventually goes to the Supreme Court of the United States, oh, guess what? SCOTUS has been bought, corrupt, another concierge Trump court. He's already boasting about that. Now, of course, if Melania Trump did skirt the law, getting her citizenship, I don't know. What does that mean about Barron Trump? Does he have to spend his whole life wondering if somebody's going to try this routine on him? Maybe he should start looking for that class action suit right now. You never know. It's spike strips thrown a few miles ahead on the road of justice. Which leads us to headline number 4, the human strike strip, or spike strip in English, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, owns between $100,000 and $250,000 in financial stock in Palantir Technologies, or Palantir Technologies, one of the biggest contractors of ISIS. That, according to his recent financial disclosure in a report by the Project on Government Oversight. Miller owns stock between $100K and $250K in one of the leading contractors for ICE. See, he has put his money where his evil is. And headline number 5 in a set of 5, collect them all, a different court ruling. Supreme Court 6-3 vote siding with the Texas Attorney General Ken, look at me when I'm talking to you, Paxton, upholding a state law that requires pornography sites must verify that their visitors are 18 years or older. There was a First Amendment challenge to this. So all porn sites must verify that their visitors are 18 or older, and I mention this entirely for the benefit of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. This is my 623rd episode of the Countdown podcast, and the third anniversary of this show is not until the 1st of August. That would be, it calculates out to, it roughly means I'm doing, how many per day, how many per week. It calculates to a lot. Friday is a holiday. I'm taking it off. And guess what? I'm going to take next week off, too. I'll be back on July 14th. The next 3 countdowns will not occur. The good news is, I guess this is good news, depending on whether you like this show or not. If you don't like this show and you're listening to it, you have my sympathies. The good news is I expect to have, when I return, some news on what the kids these days call expanding my footprint. In the interim, also of interest here, 46 years since my all-professional debut, the first sportscast from July 1979. This just in. Sports news from July 1979. And more relevantly, this was said by a United States Senator to Laura Ingraham about the Iranian bombing run. Quote, "The operation that you ran will go down in the annals of American history." Please guess what I'm going to say about that next. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Still ahead on this edition of Countdown, it's anniversary time. My first sportscast, the first day that I was paid just to do broadcasting. My boss, Sam Rosen, United Press International Audio Network, or Service. And I still have the tapes, and shockingly enough, I am willing to let you listen to them. I'll explain the whole story and play the whole tape next in Things I Promised Not to Tell. First, believe it or not, there are still more new idiots to talk about, the roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. Let me start with a bonus story before we get to the actual nominees. This is about the show Jeopardy! This is how the Daily Beast reported this story. Contestant Emily Croak secured her victory when she correctly answered a clue about the Folger Shakespeare Library founders, Henry Clay and Emily Jordan Folger. But for Croak, the excitement didn't stop with her win. "That's my great-great-aunt, Emily," exclaimed the contestant. The reveal took everyone, including host Ken Jennings, by surprise. Emily Folger, the one we mentioned in the clue, is the person you, Emily Croak, are named after? asked Jennings, getting a nod from Croak in return. While the studio audience seemed delighted over Croak's fortunate coincidence, fans were more divided when the clip hit Jeopardy's Instagram. Some fans kept the congratulations rolling, celebrating Croak's ancestral power and extraordinary luck, while one critical viewer asked, "How is anyone not a family member supposed to deduce the correct reply? What am I missing?" Wrote another, "Conflict of interest." Weird, right? What are the odds? Actually, the odds are surprisingly high. I have been on Jeopardy twice. It's Celebrity Jeopardy, fine. I won money not for myself, but for charities. You still have to get the answers right. You still run the risk of utter humiliation. Gretchen Carlson was on against me. She got the name of a city she had worked in local television wrong. She finished like minus 2,800. So anyway, the first time I'm on it, and we're trying real hard because most of us know each other. The first time I'm on it, it's a sports thing. It's Bob Costas, Robin Roberts when she was still at ESPN, and me. And up comes a baseball answer. And it's like this. He won 20 games 6 times for the Phillies in the 50s. So Bob and I know the answer to this question, and we both sort of look at each other and in unspoken friendship sort of lean back, put our buzzers down, and point at Robin. And she, who is not a big baseball person, never was, never will be, but she knows the answer to this, she thinks. She sort of gets it because why would Costas and Olbermann, the two baseball guys, not answer it? She buzzes in and goes, "Who is Robin Roberts?" And Trebek goes, "Is the correct answer. You have the board." So you talk about coincidences? Yeah, they actually put in a question, the answer of which was the name of one of the contestants. Then, 4 years later, 5 years later, the next time I'm on it, it's politics. It's Washington. It's me, Gretchen Carlson, as I referred to, Al Franken, before he was senator and before Kristen Gillibrand sabotaged him. They reveal the Jeopardy categories, potpourri, potent potables, blah, 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 and then primetime presidents. My jaw drops. I said, "What is that, Alex?" And Trebek says, "Primetime presidents, Saturday Night Live characters who portrayed presidents over the years." And I just looked at Al, and he laughed and smirked, and I looked at the audience and did a, "What am I missing here?" Al ran the category. He had control of the board because of the coin flip, and he ran the category. He answered all 5 questions before any of us could get in, because the first words were clues to him, because he wrote 4 of the 5 sketches on which the questions were based. So I said after that, when I next got the board, "Alex, I expect the final Jeopardy category had better goddamned be Sports Center anchors from the 1990s. "Oh, she's the great aunt of the contestant. It's like, oh, it's a conflict, it's a fix." No. This was a fix. They fixed Celebrity Jeopardy twice. I won't forget. Trebek. Anyway, the bronze, Emily Compagno, or Compagno. The nice thing about being on Fox is you can be stupid as Trump guessing, as he did the other day, that the Civil War ended in 1869, and the audience will never call you out on it because the audience is far more stupid. This is what Emily Compagno said. "Mamdani is talking about handouts. He's talking about gimmicks. The reason older people think of socialism as breadlines is because they lived through World War II and through communist adventures." World War II ended 80 years ago this summer, meaning the youngest people who lived through World War II are literally 80, and they were infants. I don't think they remembered these communist adventure breadlines, Ms. Compagno, as old as Fox's audience is. If you were 6 when Pearl Harbor was bombed. You are or you are about to turn 90. Not even the average Fox viewer is 90. But actually, the stupidest part is the breadlines. The breadlines in this country had nothing to do with socialism. Socialism, in fact, cured the breadlines. Socialism. The breadlines began in this country under Herbert Hoover. 1929, president, Republican president, Herbert Hoover. And if you remember the Republican breadlines, because of the Republican unrestrained capitalism depression, you're way over 90. Something you cannot say about Emily Compagno's IQ. The runner-up worser, Chris Cuomo. He, remarkably enough, is actually the dumb Cuomo brother. He hates the person who is killing the Democratic Party. Well, this is news. He hates his brother, his corrupt brother, Andrew? Oh, he doesn't mean Andrew? Jim Clyburn thinks Andrew is the future of the Democratic Party when he's like my age. Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's running for office again at whatever, late 80s, early 90s. No, the person who's killing the Democratic Party, according to Chris Cuomo, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. On his show on the Nick at Night of TV News, News Nation, Chris Cuomo decided the country is full of Iranian cells or something, and it's the fault of her. Quoting him, "This is why immigration resonated with the many, not just MAGA. The majority is not afraid of migrants, as Trump may like, but they are afraid of these guys, Iranian nationals with jihadist sympathies. You let them in with a laxity that AOC and other radicals insisted on. And the far left is actively embracing people who are the enemy, pro-Hamas, people who chant globalize the Intifada, the Palestinian uprising characterized by over 130 suicide bombings. Really?" Chris really is stupid. I'm not picking on AOC. You're picking on her. I respect her success in developing a following. She has a job, in other words, in politics. You and your brother don't. I just think that she's killing her party. She's a deranged form of Democrat. Please sue him. Please sue him for whatever $3 or $4 he has left. And I am pointing her out because she's at the top of the food chain. A recent CNN poll found she's the top Democratic leader who best reflects the core values of the Democratic Party. And this is by Democratic voters. She ranked higher than Harris, Jeffries, Newsom, even Obama. Are you kidding me? She couldn't be less about what made the Democratic Party great. Apparently, you are wrong. Your Democratic Party was killed off by people named Cuomo. Who did make the Democratic Party great, Chris? Why, his dad, Mario Cuomo. You know what? I was a big fan of Mario Cuomo. I met him once, and it was a great honor. But having watched Andrew and Chris Cuomo these last 10, 15 years or so, before I believe they are actually Mario's sons, I'm going to have to see paternity tests. Andrew Cuomo, you know what he did? Let's briefly review what Chris did. Chris was, while anchoring primetime news on CNN, serving as his brother's media advisor at meetings with other advisors during a crisis, a political scandal, while he was a newscaster allegedly covering the same scandal. On the air at CNN, he helped to whitewash his brother's COVID scandals and women's scandals on the air. And when called on this conflict of interest, his solution to covering his brother's scandal was to not cover it all, to just drop the subject, rather than doing what you would do in this situation, which is to say, good evening, I'm Chris Cuomo, and this is the Chris Cuomo I'm Smarter Than You Are show. And our first story is about my brother, the governor of New York. So we'll cover that now, and I will step aside and turn it over for 5 minutes to anybody else who works here. That's how you cover it. That's how you avoid a conflict of interest. You step aside, your newscast covers it, you have nothing to do with it, you can't rebut it, you can't deal with it. That's how you cover it if you're a journalist. Happily for Chris Cuomo, he's not a journalist. He never was a journalist. He's a TV guy and also not very good at it. He went on the air and simply solved this conflict of interest that he might say something favorable to his corrupt brother who would have to resign as governor of a state. He simply settled this by not covering the story at all. In other words, covering it up. AOC is the problem with the Democratic Party, not the Cuomos or Kristen Gillibrand. But our winner, the worst, Senator Bernie Moreno, the idiot senator from Ohio who replaced the previous idiot senator from Ohio, J.B. Vance, when he became the idiot vice president. Moreno was on Laura Ingram's Fox show and claimed about the Iran bombing that, as we know, was the greatest event in world history since Christ came back from the dead, at least according to Trump. He said, Senator Moreno, to Laura Ingram, the operation that you ran will go down in the annals of American history. You can hear the clip online. I could risk playing it for you here, but knowing Fox, this would be the one they would complain about. You'll have to trust me. He said it. He said annals. Why would I bother to make up something stupid on Fox when they produce 100 stupid things a day without any writer's embellishments? He said, of Iran, the operation that you ran will go down in the annals of American history. Senator, I believe the word is pronounced annals. I think you meant annals. I hope you meant annals. Senator Bernie, please don't talk to Laura Ingram about annals. Moreno, today's other worst person in the world. To the number one story on the countdown and things I promised not to tell, and it is hardly that today. In fact, it is more accurately show and tell. There is no particular excuse for this, except for the fact that I found these the other day. They are 3 sportscasts I did in the first 10 weeks of my professional career, from July through September of 1979. And to me, the fun part of this is hearing the old-timey names and a few events that are still talked about, like the night of the infamous disco demolition in Chicago, and one of the many nights Nolan Ryan bid for a no-hit game. And then there's reporting on the retirement of one of my favorite players, and something I could not physically do today that I did that day. You don't have to listen to all of them. I won't take it personally. You don't have to listen to any of them, in fact. But in their defense, they're each just 2 minutes long. The first one was on the morning of Tuesday, July 10th, 1979. The 1,000 stations on the United Press International Radio Network, UPI Audio, were expecting to hear our sports director, Sam Rosen, their usual morning man, to appear on their feed for the 9:45 a.m. sportscast. But at about 8:48 a.m., Sam had told the new guy, me, that I wasn't just training and watching him do all those sportscasts. I would be doing the 9:45. Surprise. What you will hear first is the talk-up. Newscasters, business reporters, sportscasters would tell the stations live that they were there and that their broadcast was coming up exactly 10 seconds from Mark.
Stations live sports will begin, preceded by a 1-second tone coming up 10 seconds from Mark.
Incidentally, I never figured out who Mark was. Here it is. Here's the sportscast.
Good morning. 3 members of the Houston Astros named this morning to manager Tommy Lasorda's National League pitching staff for next Tuesday's All-Star Game. Top winner Joe Niekro, tapped by Lasorda, along with Joaquin Andujar and reliever Joe Sambito. Rounding out the staff, veteran Steve Carlton of Philadelphia and Gaylord Perry of the Padres, Steve Rogers of Montreal, the Cubs' Bruce Sutter, and Cincinnati's Mike Lacasse. And speaking of the All-Stars, you would think Don Baylor and his 80 RBI would be a shoo-in for the AL outfield. Baylor drove in another run last night as the Angels whipped Boston 6-0, but matter of fact, he placed 14th in the voting.
The most important thing for me right now is just to win on this ball club. A lot of people brought up the All-Star thing, and I can't do anything about that, the voting and things, but I can do something about this ball club. If I produce on this club, we'll win.
Win they did last night as Nolan Ryan struck out 12. That puts California a half game up on Texas in the West. Elsewhere in the American, the Orioles lead is up to 3 in the East. They beat Oakland by the score of 7-3. It was the Blue Jays 7, Milwaukee 1, Minnesota over Detroit 5-3 as Jerry Kuzman won his 11th. The White Sox stopped Texas 5-4 and Cleveland over KC 8-2. The New York Yankees were off, but they made an important move for their pennant hopes, the activation of injured relief pitcher Rich Gossage. Over in the National, Montreal's Eastern lead is up to 5.5. Bill Lee blanked the Dodgers 3-zip. Phillies over the Giants 4-2. The Cardinals beating Cincinnati 6-3 and Chicago 7, Atlanta 4. At the Pan Am Games in San Juan, a big upset in the 800-meter run. American James Robinson shocking Cuban Olympic champ Alberto Juantorena. The U.S. boosted its gold medal total to 81. Both the men's and women's basketball teams remain undefeated. And for the second time in his career, crack Montreal Canadiens goaltender Ken Dryden has called it quits. Dryden going back to the law books at the age of 31. This time it looks permanent, though the Habs say the big goalie is welcome back at any time. From the sports desk of United Press International, I'm Keith Olbermann.
What, no NFL camp news? Today that whole sportscast would be nothing but NFL camp news. Well, it's not bad, considering I was on 20 years old and I was going on no sleep. I was having an out-of-body experience, and the tape is running a little fast. I should tell you about that tone that starts each one of these. The tone was used for automated stations. That would be the signal for them to take the network, as it were, and put me on their automated stations. And it had another automated quality to it. The guy who succeeded me once went in there a little impaired, and when the tone generator did not generate the tone because somebody had switched it off, instead of just doing his sportscast anyway, he got up and left. They threw him back in the booth, and somebody shouted, "Talk!" They fired him not long after. So that's Tuesday, my first sportscast as a professional. By Friday, I was on my own. I was anchoring the night shift at UPI, 6 sportscasts, 1 an hour, starting at 5:45. The big news that day was what had happened the night before at the Tigers-White Sox doubleheader, when the Sox tried to tap into the nation's sincere anti-disco zeitgeist by blowing up a bunch of disco records between games. What, as the kids say, could possibly go wrong?
After pondering the evidence for the better part of the day, American League President Lee MacPhail has forfeited the second game of last night's Chicago-Detroit doubleheader to the visiting Tigers. A between-games anti-disco promotional event escalated into big trouble. An estimated 7,000 fans stormed the field and wreaked havoc. The second game never got underway. Sox center fielder Chet Lemon was upset by the forfeit, but as he told reporters, there was more to worry about last night than who won and who lost.
So, there's really nothing I could do or say anything like that. I don't even think about it. It's just one of those things that happened. It was out of my control. I'm just happy that I can go out today and play baseball.
I think we're lucky that every ball player is able to walk around and nobody got hurt.
Everybody, just not only the ball players, but anybody that was fortunate enough to get away from here last night without getting hurt or anything like that that has to be fortunate. It happens. It's a shame, but it happens. It's just the way this whole system is.
Detroit and Chicago are scheduled for a plain old night game later today. Meanwhile, the disc jockey who led the anti-disco stunt refused to take the blame for the incident. Steve Dahl said it was not his fault. He claims the media have distorted the event. In other baseball news, the Cincinnati Reds have extended manager John McNamara's contract. McNamara will be skipper in Cincinnati at least through the 1980 season. It'll be the United States and Puerto Rico tonight playing for the basketball gold medal at the Pan American Games, and the U.S. will have Coach Bobby Knight at courtside. Knight today got a postponement of his assault trial until the 22nd of next month. Also this evening, the American women's hoop squad goes for gold against Cuba. In action this afternoon, the U.S. took golds in both men's and women's tennis doubles, and Mel Purcell took the men's single title. In golf, Ed Doherty is all alone atop the Greater Milwaukee Open. He shot a 666 today, 1 stroke ahead of Vic Regalado. And at the Women's Open in Connecticut, Sandra Palmer and Debbie Massey share the lead. That is early in the second round. From the sports desk of United Press International, I'm Keith Olbermann.
I love Chet Lemon there saying it wasn't him. It was the system, man. It's the system. By the way, guess who was the organist at Comiskey Park for that disco demolition night for the White Sox and Tigers on that night in August of 1979? Yes, our own Nancy Faust. All right, so I think that was the 6:45 sportscast on the night of the 13th. Maybe it was the 7:45. But by 9:45, Disco Demolition Night Aftermath was no longer the lead story. In an early evening start in Anaheim, a man whose name is now inseparable from no-hitters was, when my 10:45 sportscast began, on the verge of throwing another one.
Through 8 innings at Anaheim, Nolan Ryan of the California Angels has a no-hitter going against the New York Yankees. Ryan's no-hitter preserved with 1 out in the 8th inning when Jim Spencer lined a dying Quail to center field that the official score ruled an error. Again, Ryan bidding for his 5th no-hitter of his career. He leads the Yankees 3-0 going into the 9th inning. An American League final tonight, Minnesota beat Toronto 6-4 in the National. The Padres came up with 3 in the 9th to beat Montreal 7-5 in the first of a doubleheader. The Mets got 2 RBI from Steve Henderson as they won the opener of their nighter with the Giants 7-6. The home run bats propelled the Braves to a 13-4 mashing of Pittsburgh. Jeff Burrows had a grand slam and Bob Horner hit 2 homers, and the Phillies beat the Dodgers 3-2. American League President Lee McPhail has declared a forfeit in the second game of last night's scheduled Detroit-Chicago doubleheader. The nightcap was never played because thousands of fans streamed onto the field during a promotional event after the opener. AL spokeswoman Phyllis Marriage reads President McPhail's official decision.
It was the judgment of the umpires that it was not possible to start the second game of the July 12th doubleheader because of inadequate crowd control and damage to the playing field, both of which are the specific responsibility of the home team. It is therefore required of me that I declare this game forfeited to Detroit by a score of 9-0.
At the Pan Am Games in San Juan, the U.S. women took the silver medal in basketball, dropping their final game to Cuba 91-86 this evening. Meanwhile, America's Mary Decker took the 1,500-meter race, and Debbie LaPlante won the gold in the 100-meter low hurdles. This afternoon, the U.S. took gold medals in both men's and women's tennis doubles, and Mel Purcell won the gold in men's singles. In golf, it's Geraldine Britz leading the pack at the U.S. Women's Open in Connecticut. She shot a 200 par today and has the lead by 2 strokes after the second round. And Ed Doherty leads the Greater Milwaukee Tournament. He has a 1-stroke lead. From the sports desk of United Press International, I'm Keith Olbermann.
That's a lot of information for a 2-minute sportscast, kid. Nolan Ryan, by the way, did not get his 5th no-hitter that night. An Angels infielder fumbled a Thurman Munson ground ball to start the 9th inning. Then Greg Nettles popped out. Then Reggie Jackson got the first Yankee hit of the game, and a moment later a sacrifice fly took away Ryan's shutout, too. It was the second of 5 times Nolan Ryan lost a no-hitter in the 9th. He would get his 5th no-hitter 2 years later. He got 7 for his career and lost 5 in the 9th. Amazingly, Thurman Munson would be dead just 20 days later. There would be moments at Yankee Stadium the rest of that year that were not overwhelmed by the shock of his death, but they were very few. On September 16th, 1979, the great Yankees and Athletics pitcher Jim Catfish Hunter was honored in a retirement ceremony, and I got to cover it, and then I got to hear my reports on the air on one of the New York radio stations I grew up listening to.
Honored Catfish Hunter, who's retiring at the end of the season. Keith Olbermann reports.
After receiving gifts, serious and comical, and the praise of his teammates, his manager, and the fans, Catfish Hunter marked his retirement ceremony by noting the important people who could not attend.
3 people that I wish could have been here today. The scout that signed me, Clyde Clutch. My dad. And Thurman Munson.
Hunter leaves the Yankees to retire to his farm in Hartford, North Carolina. Keith Olbermann at Yankee Stadium, New York.
He's retiring at the end of the season, and Keith Olbermann has details.
The Yankees showered their retiring right-hander with gifts, a trip to Hawaii, a pickup truck, and even a brown elephant. After his teammates and the fans thanked him, it was time for Catfish Hunter to do the thanking.
I'd like to thank you for all the gifts I received today. And thank God for giving me strength and letting me be a ball player. What I always wanted to be. Thank you very much.
The 30-minute ceremony was the symbolic end of Hunter's 15-year Major League career, a career that has to date featured 224 victories. Hunter says he'll miss his teammates, but he's missed his family even more and plans to become a gentleman farmer in North Carolina. Keith Olbermann at Yankee Stadium in New York.
2 things about that. It was such a different time. I got to the ballpark early that Sunday morning, and perhaps an hour before the ceremony, I saw Jim Hunter sitting by himself in the dugout. I approached him for an interview, explaining who I was and saying if he was trying to take in the last day and just contemplate things, I was sorry to have intruded, and of course we could skip the interview. He laughed and said, "Nah, I'm just sitting here waiting for them to give me them gag gifts." There's no PR person, no entourage to keep me away, just him. I tried to get him to repeat his most famous quote, this famous soundbite that all of us who ever heard it kept repeating to each other for years, where he insisted his marm was just fine, which was the answer to the question, Catfish, how's your arm? Marm feels real good. And that leads me to the second postscript. There was also no mult box. A mult box is an audio feed from a live event at a press conference or off something like a public address system while a, player is retiring and giving his farewell speech. I asked the Yankees PR man if there was somewhere I could plug in to record Hunter's address. Nope. I said, you don't have a mult box for the Catfish Hunter retirement speech? Nope. Could I get on the field and just tape my microphone to the PA mic and then stay crouched over with the photographers? Nope. So I had to get creative. I was sent to get the speech. Those clips of Catfish Hunter talking about his teammates and supporters, reverberating through the vast caverns of Yankee Stadium over the PA system, were recorded by me standing atop a garbage can next to the hot dog stand next to the Yankee Stadium press box, and while balancing and trying not to fall off the damn thing, extending my right arm completely above my head and sticking my microphone into one of the PA speakers hanging from the ceiling. It worked. I got the tape, huh? I mean, you can still hear it. It's more than 43 years ago now, and I'm still proud of it. On the other hand, as I recalled this, my rotator cuff passed out just by remembering the pain. I've done all the damage I can do here to my rotator cuff. Thank you for listening. If you're not following or subscribing to the podcast, please do so. You don't have to use your own name, I'm told. Here are the credits. Most of the music, including our theme here from Beethoven's Ninth, was arranged, produced, and performed by Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel. They are the Countdown musical directors. All orchestration and keyboards by John Philip Chanel. Guitars, bass, and drums by Brian Ray, produced by TKO Brothers. Other Beethoven selections have been arranged and performed by No Horns Allowed. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2, and it was written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc. Musical comments by Nancy Faust, the best baseball stadium organist ever and survivor of Disco Demolition Night in 1979. Our announcer today was Larry David. Everything else was pretty much my fault. So that's Countdown for this, the 723rd day since Donald Trump's first attempted coup against the democratically elected government of the United States. Arrest him now while we still can. A new edition tomorrow. Until then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.
From the sports desk of United Press International, I'm Keith Olbermann.